Hello everyone. So, yeah, I decided to re-review this model kit um, when circumstance forced me to delete my old channel. Um, I didn't take the opportunity to go and download a lot of my videos because I had so many videos. Um, so I decided I wanted to I lost my original review of this model, and so I wanted to do another one. So, yeah, this is the 1/32nd scale Galileo Shuttlecraft from Polar Lights. It came out last year now. It was like last summer, I think. And it's a little dusty. Um, I don't have anywhere to put it, and so it just kind of sits out, and it's gotten all dusty. I hope that it shouldn't show up too much on the video, but yeah. So, okay. First thing that everybody says, it's missing the interior. And yes, it is. And I understand that for some people that's kind of you know, that's a deal breaker. They're like, well, why bother? If I can't have an interior, and I get it. Um, I wanted this thing, you know, and I knew I was going to um, build it in flight mode, and there are two different modes, um, which is nice. But yeah, I thought because in a lot of the flight scenes in the show, in the original photography, where they filmed an actual miniature, um, these windows a lot of times were closed. Um, when it took off and landed, sometimes the center one might be open, or they all might be open. I had briefly considered doing. I'm not good with lighting, but I had briefly considered doing two lights um, in here, basically a light source um, right here and a light source right here, shining aft and forward. Um, and kind of I was going to put like a kind of a clear styrene partition, but I was going to fog it a lot, and to give kind of that effect, because the actual miniature didn't have an interior either. It just had, lighting on the inside. Um, so yeah, and something tells me that with how much people are bitching about it, and justifiably so, I'm their complaints are justified and completely understandable and reasonable. This kit should have come with an interior. You know, you build the flying sub, you want to have an interior. You build the Sea View, you want to have a little interior in there. And the kit's big enough, you know. So yeah, um, but I, you know, yeah. Sometimes I don't want to wait for stuff like that, and if I the only reason that I would have an interior is, and the only character I want for the interior of this thing is probably Matt Decker. Where he's got like his hand on his head and he's got that really, pained expression on his face. Yeah, that's the kind of Trekkie I am. So a diorama would be kind of nice, with the three leads, maybe Scotty, um, but you know, we got what we got. I'm glad they finally did it. They had a poll at one point. It got lots of numbers, but they're kind of like, round two was like, eh. So, but they finally did it, and I'm glad they did. Um, these you can have open, the doors, which is cool. You can have a step here that's open, but again, I'm doing it in flight mode, or did it in flight mode. And these are the landing feet on the front. I've had it for I don't know how long, months and months and months and months and months, and I still haven't worked on the landing gear. Um, you know, it's one of those things because the landing gear doesn't retract; it just stays out on the rear. Um, yeah, let's see here. I'm trying to remember everything. That's the problem. I wish I'd downloaded all those old videos, but whatever. So, let's see. Yeah. So, the design. I want to talk about the design for a second. The Shuttlecraft was designed by the same guy that designed the Studebaker Avanti. And if you look at the Avanti and you look at the nose, it's got that kind of slope to it. You know, the lines are similar. And I think that's really cool. You know, that car was kind of an interesting. It was interesting because of those factors, you know. And some people will say, "Oh, it's a shoebox." Yeah, okay, I get saying that, but it's really not. It's deceptively simple, just like the original Enterprise. You know, try scratch building this thing because there are curves all over it. The bottom here is curved. The top back here is curved, but it's a little flatter up front. Although the parts don't fit all that well on the top, at least. Um, so it's got a little curvature to it where the front doesn't have as much of a curve. You know, it's fine. For what it is, it's really good. You know, um, it just needs to have an interior. But yeah, so it people who tried to scratch build this thing, a lot of them have ripped quite a bit of their hair out in doing so, um, because it is actually a complex shape. So yeah, there's so much for me to remember. Why write things down? Paper? Computer? What is typing? I don't understand these terms. Um, so very quickly before I forget, paint. So I used all Tamiya paints, and it's actually two-tone, which is how the actual miniature and the 3/4 scale mock-up was painted. On the top here, I used Tamiya Royal Light Gray, and I used Tamiya Gray Primer. And on the bottom, I can't remember what I used. It was one of the darker grays, but it's like, you know, you have the lighter grays, and then you have the darker ones. And this gray is one of the gray on the bottom is one of the lighter. It's like the lightest dark gray that you can get, and I wish I could remember what it was, but I used up all the paint building the model, and so the can is long gone. But I remembered Royal Light Gray, and that's kind of the important thing. And I don't know, it may look a little different on the camera versus what it does in real life, but everyone who's seen it in real life thinks that the color is pretty good. So, and it comes out of the can. You know, you don't have to mix anything or any of that other stuff. And I don't have a whatchamacallit, airbrush yet, so yeah. What else here? Just flat white behind the domes here, because you want that shine on the outside, because they had that on the original, on the 3/4 scale mock-up at the very least. And this did show up in TNG. It was actually, the miniature did, and it was in I don't know, maybe it was just random quarters. It was Troy's quarters for some reason. Why would she have a mock-up of the TOS Shuttlecraft? Yeah. But it was there, and it had like a a smoked clear thing on the front here, like the front had been damaged or something, or they wanted to cover it up to make it look different. I don't know. And these are just, I used flat aluminum or no, bare metal silver on these parts on the back. So, yeah. My build technique, because it's two-tone, I decided to paint a lot of the parts separately, and then once it was painted, assemble it. You know, that's kind of one of those things that it's up to you, you know. So, you know, I didn't fill any seams, but the seams on this are largely hidden, which is nice. But I don't regret building it, you know, painting every single part individually and then, you know, assembling it. I don't regret it. And you know, you make sure that that you know, the parts, when if they're attached to the trees, you know, they're in areas where if you know, when you clip them off and you clean them up, you know, the damage to that area of the paint won't be seen. So yeah. Oh yeah. So assembly. Yeah. This thing was a nightmare to assemble. An absolute nightmare. And I mean, when you're, you know, when it's just the bare plastic and you intend to paint it, you don't have to be as careful with it, you know. I was always rubbing my hands. You know, I had a cloth and I would rub my hands off on it, you know, make sure there was no glue so I didn't get any fingerprints in my nice paint job. Oh, and I did do a clear coat over it. I used Tamiya semi-gloss clear, and it looks right, you know, with the semi-gloss. You don't want to go gloss because it's too, you know, and I don't think flat would work on this. When you look at the shots of the actual 3/4 mock-up, it does have that kind of mild sheen to it, you know. So that's what I did. But yeah, assembly. So yeah, this was a butt pucker factor of 10. Especially the seam here joining. Okay, basically the bottom is the base, and you put a lot of stuff. You put everything kind of onto that. And the build sequence in the instructions is goofy. I mean, it works, but it just makes it harder. So there's the seam between the bottom piece and the sides. Yeah, that was horrific because there's not enough material on the bottom. The parts are very thin, not super thin. I've worked with thinner, but you know, it's very thin, very, very thin, and there's almost not enough material on there. Excuse me. There's almost not enough material on there to assemble it. And so a tip that another modeler gave in one of his reviews of this kit, and one that I will give in mine because it works, is before you put the sides onto the bottom, you put the nacelle pylons on there. And you probably want to leave the engines off just because of weight. But yeah, and so putting the pylons, the wing assembly here with the pylons on there gave more surface area, and it was easier to get the pylon in. You'll find all this out, you know, when you if you buy your own kit. But but that gave more material to put the side on. So that's how I did it. And the top is actually, it's not glued in. So, and it, you know, the top piece is a very large, flat piece. Well, it's not totally flat. It's curved, you know. But it's very difficult. It was difficult for me to try and get it in there and get it straight because it doesn't fit very well. So I don't know if we can get the right angle, but there's a little gap up here. There's a little gap. Again, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a gap right here along the side, and you can glue it, but again, you're gonna have a gap. But good news is, you know, this rolled section here on the top, it covers it up enough for me anyway. So yeah. The other part that I had a problem with was this back here, the engine section. Um, it's it comes in 3 different parts, and I'm trying to remember the sequence. But again, I glued it beforehand, or no, I painted it beforehand before I glued it, and I do have a little bit of bleed back here on this bottom lip, but it's fine. It's not that big of a deal, you know. But the problem that I had in painting the parts beforehand was that one of the parts, when you assemble the thing, there's the white piece in back it's kind of clear, you know, and I painted it white in the back, you know, because I'm not doing lighting. And then you have an inner piece, another piece which is attached to, I think maybe it's the bottom, and it's kind of a crazy thing, but I had to mask it off and paint it in sections because this part is this part right here, and that is attached to the piece, to the second piece. It's a 3-layer thing, clear, and then you got the flat back, and then the bottom, and then you have the top, and you have another thing that goes in there. And each layer is a different color. So the white is white, and then there's the intersection in here, and that is and that's gray. It's the color of the outside of the ship, and then you have the black. Well, when I pushed the top section in assembling the 3 parts, when I push the top section, it's kind of like a thing like this, and you're pushing it through. Well, this piece right here scraped up the bottom here, or the top of this bottom piece. Scraped a lot of the paint off. So I had to go back, mask everything, repaint it. Pain in the ass. Very tight tolerances in there. So if you do the same thing that I do and you paint the parts before you assemble it, keep that in mind, because that part, that assembly, is difficult to do once it's installed in the ship. Sorry, I keep burping. I'm all burpy. But you kind of have to do it if you want it to be accurate. You have to do it paint it in those sections, because the center part is gray. It's not black like the rest of it. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things. You just have to bite the bullet, you know. And I mean, what you can do is you can just not paint this part, you know, scrape up the layer that doesn't matter, and then paint over it with the color that you want. But I didn't know that the tolerances were that tight when I painted them, so hopefully you won't make the same mistake that I did. Let's see here. Yeah. So you got this little open panel right here. You have decals which go in there. You have some paint. And you have, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Then you actually have two of these. This is the outer panel that goes over it. It tends to want to fall off, so, but yeah. And it has a little, oh, right now when I want it to come off, it won't. Of course, isn't that always the way? Oh God, welcome to scale modeling, folks. You actually get two of them, which I had forgotten about. Yeah, I can't get it off there now, but there we go. One of the tabs broke off, but it also has detail under here, and there are decals that go under here. Usually, when I put it on there, it won't stay. So I was considering just gluing it because it's supposed to be in flight mode anyway. Were I to do a diorama, I would definitely have that part open, and you can just glue it open, you know, if the thing's going to be on a base. So yeah, decals were really nice. I mean, you can kind of see, you know, they're kind of raised, but it's not bad, you know. Yeah, it's not too bad. And if you do a clear coat over it, it should be all right. Let's see. Yeah, and these pylons are not dark gray. They're the same gray as the top of the ship, so keep that in mind as well. Yeah, so the third landing leg. Now, it has two different configurations, and that's why I haven't assembled it yet and painted it, because I just keep putting off doing the configuration that I need to do. So when it's on the ground and it's landed, the leg comes out, and there's a foot that goes on there, and the foot is a rectangle, and the rectangle is oriented, you know, the long sides, you know, it's like this. You know, this way. But when it's in flight, which is the miniature, that foot pad turns, and the long sides is going kind of, you know, lengthwise. I hope this is making sense. It's barely making sense to me, but yeah. And if you look at shots from the show, you'll see that it's in a different orientation. I wish that this was reflected in the kit parts, so that I didn't have to do a bunch of modifying. But you know, whatever. I've been doing this for so long that modifications aren't a big deal. It's just getting the steam to do it, you know, because the thing's all done. It just needs that landing leg, and so it's always that last little bit that you always kind of, oh, I'll do it later. Oh, I don't feel like doing that right now. Oh, I'm really into this project or that project, you know. Yeah, and I'm gonna have like 3 projects here coming up, so hopefully, fingers crossed, if I'm able to make it work. But that's why I haven't done that yet. Oh yeah, and you probably already know this, but you do get the decal sheet. It is extensive enough, which is nice. Although it's missing one thing, and I understand why they didn't do it. But so the only decals on the sheet that are missing, and they probably didn't do it because it wasn't seen um, on the original photography. Actually, I don't know if any of these were seen on the original photography, but um, in the remastered episodes, um, it was in the episode two-parter, uh, the Menagerie. Um, when Kirk takes that shuttlecraft, it's a star-based shuttlecraft, and it says SB whatever, it has a number, and it says Starbase on the front. I thought that's really cool. You don't usually see that. They're not in the instructions, but it's fine. I get why. But they do have instructions for Galileo and Columbus and Einstein. And they have a Roman numeral 2, for the Galileo 2. And I guess Kirk was really attached to the name Galileo. I mean, how many names are you going to have? I mean, you think about how big an organization like Starfleet would have to be, and by extension, think about how many shuttlecraft there would have to be throughout the entirety of, presumably, the Federation. It's a lot of shuttlecraft. So that's why you can have a shuttlecraft with a 25-digit number on it. Yeah. But yeah, a decent enough decal sheet. So yeah. Overall, build issues aside, I would say that this is a great kit. Would I recommend it? Yeah, sure. I mean, if you're a fan of the original series, and you want to have a nicely detailed, accurate model of the Galileo shuttlecraft from the original series, then hell yeah, pick it up. You know, there are garage kit producers who already have parts for this thing. 3D printed and all that stuff. So, if you got a 3D printer, you can print your own parts. So, yeah. This model is what AMT should have released back in the 70s. Their original series Klingon Battlecruiser proved that they could make a really nice, accurate model of a ship from Star Trek. I wish that their Enterprise had been as accurate as their Klingon Battlecruiser. Because that was the only one that they got right, was that Battlecruiser. Yeah, I have so many memories. I am obsessed with accuracy, and I notice every detail. It's kind of a curse in a way. And some people tend to hate me for it because I'll say, well, they're like, oh my God, this thing's the greatest thing, this replica, this model, whatever. And I'm like, well, actually, it's wrong in these different ways. And they're like, hey, why are you such a downer? It's like, phew, it's a model kit. Accuracy counts to some of us. It matters. And I can't tell you how many hours I spent watching Star Trek. And they'd show the shuttlecraft, and I'd have that little AMT shoebox. That really was a shoebox. I was like, this thing doesn't look accurate at all. And this is me as like a 6 or 7-year-old kid. So, little kids can notice and recognize this stuff too. So, but I'm glad that we finally have one. It's just, 50 plus years, you know, overdue. So, yeah. Would I recommend it? Yeah, sure. Go for it. I probably already said that. Yeah. I don't, I never show the box in any of my reviews because I assume if somebody wants to see the box, I mean, it's a box. Who cares, I mean, when you have the model, are you going to sit and look at the box? No, I throw them away. I'm not going to keep a bunch of cardboard around, I'm going to recycle it. But there's the box. Well, you can hear all the little bits and pieces. It says it's 11 inches long, and I know when people heard that, they're like, oh, it's too small. No, it's actually pretty big. You can get a lot of detail in here. And let's be honest, it's not something that was highly detailed. You are going to have problems, though, when you try to fit an interior in here. You're going to have to do a lot of bending and stretching of the dimensions, So, yeah. And I think the interior, there are parts of it that are painted like a salmon color. So, just keep that in mind, too. Anyway, yeah, that's my review of this model. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.